Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatirons Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning. Welcome back, everybody, to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This is episode number 89, closing in on 90 real fast. And here with Dussex and Tasso, finally got you two together in the same, well, at least in the same state. Because you guys have both been doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and we need to catch up with all of your adventures. As we're recording this last weekend, you were both racing, and Dussex, you're actually on the other side of the country. You're all the way out in New Jersey, and somehow made it back to Colorado. So where should we start? Should we start with hill climbs or with Dussex's adventures?
Let's start with the hill climb, since it seems like Tasso's more fresh up on it right now.
Okay. So, Tasso, where were you?
Yeah, it's just on the other side of the state, not the country. So, so we were out Grand Mesa kind of area, so Grand Junction, Colorado, a little southeast of town there. There's a thing called the Land's End Road because it goes up to the Land's End Observatory, and we race up it.
Nice. And this is, we talked about this in one of the recent podcasts. It's one of the longest dirt hill climbs left.
Yeah, so it is the third oldest motorsport event in the country, which I think if anybody's been listening to the podcast or whatever for some time now, they've heard me say that. It ran all the way back when hill climbs were essentially, a way to kind of prove that cars were going to be a viable competitor to horses. Which is why they started going up Pikes Peak and all these other kind of things. So, right, this hill climb started at that point when they were trying to prove that a hill could make it, or a car could make it up a hill just as fast as a horse or a donkey. So it ran all the way through. It took a break like Pikes Peak did a couple times over the years for wars and stuff like that. But starting in, I think, the 70s, the CHCA picked up the production for that event. So. Or the organization rather, and so then they've been running out there ever since. We don't go all the way up the road anymore because it gets kind of like particularly narrow and rowdy and four-wheel drive roady up top. But it is still, as far as I know, and I don't know a lot about international gravel surface hill climbs. I know there's one in like Oceania somewhere, either New Zealand or Australia. But I don't know how it compares to the Land's End Road, but I think it's, at least of the ones I'm aware of, it's kind of the longest gravel hill climb left around. So and it's definitely the longest one in our calendar, and kind of the most prestigious event. Even the entry fees are higher for Land's End versus the other ones. So if that's any kind of indicator, we always win like special prizes and stuff like that. The classes always have like donations and stuff, so it's cool. Like the whole event is just a little fancier and stuff like that. But it was a lot of fun. Yet again, I ended up second overall. Right. Because I'm just never going to win an overall.
Well,
but we were within like, I think I did the math. It was 0.69 seconds for the first place. So.
Well, where did you qualify?
We qualified first in class. Finished first in class.
Yeah.
Qualified.
I thought you were first overall in qualifying.
No, I think somebody got us, or one or two people.
Okay.
We were one or two off. I think Wyatt Dallenbach actually was fastest qualifier. So one of the Dallenbach family.
Okay.
So I think he driving Paul Dallenbach's monstrous four-wheel drive open wheel car,
right?
Which is a technical feat in itself just to see that car work. It's amazing. So he qualified first, but then they had trouble on race day and couldn't put together a good run. And we went out there, and right off the bat, Spencer Steele, who actually had qualified behind us, and it's just not the first time he's done this, where he like comes out on race day and delivers. And so he did. And so we started off after the first run about 3 seconds back, went down, on our second run, tried to, like, it was good. If you like watched our in-car video, like I was feeling it at the end of the run. Like we're like high-fiving and hell yes and all sorts of stuff like that. It was a good run, but it wasn't quite enough. Made it back to within that, just more than half a second, but not quite the right side of half a second. So
super close.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, job well done. Really, really interesting to see the in-car, like you previously put up your in-car video, but then right before we were jumping on here, you put out, you got Spencer Steele's in-car as well. So you did this overlay where your car and his car running.
Yep.
It was super, super interesting to watch, and see where the difference was made up, which is fascinating.
Yeah. For two really different cars, right?
Yeah.
There's a slide of kind of the basic stats of each car at the beginning of the video. I'll put it up on my YouTube, so go to OTC Racing YouTube and check it out.
Yeah. I'll put a link in the description too.
Cool. So it's because Spencer and I have been talking a bit more back and forth, and Jackson Smith, who runs the CHCA media and some team stuff for Spencer as well. Like, man, we should put our runs back to back, or over under head to head, whatever, side by side.
Because Spencer's the one that got you at the last hill climb too, right?
Yeah, at Rangeley, he's doing a good job at keeping us from ever winning an overall. Spencer,
yeah,
but no, he's a super nice guy and stuff like that. Love Spencer, but
so let's just clarify for people that maybe haven't watched it, and I can put up a picture too. But what car is he driving? What you're driving your rally car? What is he driving?
Yeah, so I got the stats. It's what did I say? 1990 Wells Coyote. So the Wells chassis were designed for essentially gravel Pikes Peak. So they're open wheel, tiny little cockpit for the driver, a little taller looking than like a Formula One car, Indy car, or something like that, and also pretty simple. But they're I think all of them are double A arm front and back suspension, tiny little front tires, big ass rear tires. The tires used to be called the Pikes Peak Special. I think that they're now like a CHCA bespoke tire made by Hoosier that those guys run, because the original tires they stopped being made when Pikes Peak went pavement.
Yeah.
But he's got from what I hear, and I don't know how much of this is secret or not, but I'm going to go ahead and share it. So I think it started off as like a Windsor block, like a Ford Windsor block in that car. And then he got a bunch of NASCAR internals from, as the rules change in NASCAR, they dump a bunch of their old parts and get new stuff. So I think he got a bunch of NASCAR internals, just whatever he could find, to Frankenstein together a 417 cubic inch methanol, individual throttle bodies and injectors for each one, monster of a car.
It's a big engine.
Yeah, so I think their estimate is on a chassis dyno would make 750 horsepower.
Yeah.
But it's hard to dyno one of those cars and stuff. And then big wings, they got even like their end plate design on their wings takes a lot of the last generation of Formula One end plate design and stuff like that. And they're badass cars. They make noticeable. Actually, I could look up. I think he makes like 1,000 pounds of downforce or something like that at 80 miles an hour or something. So something I forget. That's a rough number, but amazing cars, purpose built for what it is.
It's like I mean, again, hopefully by this point there will be a picture up there. Zoom tight Dussex.
Thank you.
But basically, it's like if you took a rail dragster and then you shrunk it down just a little bit, and then you lifted it up so that it's got gravel suspension on it. That's kind of like the basic premise of the Wells Coyote.
Yeah, like a single seat dune buggy with big ass wings on it, a big V8 kind of thing, or I don't know. They're badass cars. But so like go watch the in-car or the head-to-head video, and you can see like where those cars still have their weaknesses, especially that car being two-wheel drive.
Yep.
I can like where the course is twistier and more switchbacks and stuff. I can see myself, or my video, pulling ahead if I look for little landmarks on the side of the track.
Yep.
And actually make it up to like, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds probably ahead of them.
Yep.
By kind of that point, or by the end of the twisty parts, and then a couple straightaways open up where he can use all that power he's got, and it's just and then in like in whatever 25-30 seconds over the course of the run, he makes up all those seconds. And then another switchback happens, I pull ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
And then a couple straightaways, and then he finishes less than a second ahead of us. So it's, I kind of knew these concepts, but I've never seen the videos like synced up back to back before. And it's interesting. It's
super interesting.
Super cool to kind of see stuff like that.
Dussex, did you have a chance to watch that overlay or his inquiry?
I didn't. I didn't even see the link, so I'm gonna have to go into the YouTube page and see it. But yeah, I was driving back right when you guys were like, "Let's do this." I'm like, "Sick, give me like 5 minutes."
Okay.
Coming back from breakfast.
Yeah, right. I just snuck the video up there. So by the time this podcast or YouTube video, whatever comes out, it'll be up there and it'll have millions of views by then. But
for sure.
So I'll tell you what we watch it here at the shop, and the impressions is that, I mean, you can tell that like top speed, he has you beat. Grip wise, you have him beat because of the all-wheel drive. And it's really interesting to see like how close you are for such a good chunk of the run. And you're right, like in the more technical sections, you're actually pulling ahead, and there's probably a point where you're, like I said, 2 to 3 seconds ahead of him. But then if you're watching in the video, the overlay, there's this right hairpin where there's a blue tint kind of on the apex, which is kind of the last hairpin before it opens up for the finish line. And that's where he got you. He got you there. You drifted wide. It's like he was able to get on the power a little bit earlier, and then it all of a sudden opened up, and it was like he got that little bit of an initial run, and then everything from that point to the finish line was better for his car. And that's where he got you, just literally on that last hairpin to the end.
Yeah, so that last hairpin is called Eagle's Nest because it has this commanding view of this gigantic valley. And it's a really beautiful corner. And you can tell kind of when you come up to that corner in the in-car videos, you're just looking at blue sky for days. And there's like a cliff on the other side and stuff. But but you're coming into it, like in my car, I come down from 5th to 2nd for that corner. So it's a big break coming into that corner, and then it is just a big hairpin. But like 20 seconds before that, there's a straightaway that kind of leads into some aspen trees, and which go back and watch the video, and you can go find these landmarks. But you can see kind of at that point, the course kind of opens up a bit, and that's like my maximum differential, and he starts marching back by Eagle's Nest, that hairpin. He's like right there even. I pull ahead on him a little bit. He makes enough for the next straightaways to pull ahead of us. And even in that, like the very last like sequence of corners, there's 2 or 3, like a left into a double apex right. I pull back a little bit of time even in those corners, but just not quite enough to make up the gap. So it's, it gets me all fired up watching the video. Like I want to go back out there and be like, all right, now I know I'm going to lose time to him. I'm going to maximize on these points. And like, it's a good like learning tool for me too, to go back and look at it. Cause I know where I made little mistakes in that run. And so it's, I don't know. I mean, it again just shows the power of, in-car video and stuff like that, and the immediate feedback that, we have access to these days just with, simple multimedia kind of stuff.
Man, it seems like the first overall, I mean, it's there within the grasp, but it's that video is just proof again how like you can get really close, but like everything has to line up. Like this is, you see like drivers, like professional drivers talk about how like a mistake or like 1 or 2 mistakes, even in a lap that can be the difference between first place and 5th place qualifying and whatnot. I mean, that's a universal to motorsports, right? We're all chasing our perfect lap or our perfect run or our perfect pit stop or our perfect whatever, right? And and each of us knows in ourselves, you're like, man, that one corner is what did it. That's what lost it for me. I need to go back and get that corner right, and then I'll do it right. Like if I can just get that corner, another thing happens, and so you start chasing yourself around the track or up the run or something like that. And I don't know, it's just it's a cool thing. I love it. It's part of what I love about racing and what it draws out in a competitor and stuff like that. But really, like the CHCA events, if you look at, not just the difference between Spencer's car and my car and how close the racing is, and this is the same at multiple tracks too, where we've had
turbo long travel, like score legal UTVs that are right there in the mix with us as well within a second. And, 4-wheel drive open class cars, class called competition truck.
Sometimes Cole brings out those Sierra cars.
Yeah, the Sierra cars, which are motorcycle motors and an open wheel, fun chassis and stuff like that. And he's making electric ones nowadays too.
Yep.
And there's talk of, maybe someday not too far in the future, e rallycross car coming out as well, because it's like the perfect format of racing for electronic kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
ProDrive's developing them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so many different kind of, a super sprint car. It's a little inline 4 Honda motor running on methanol and a much lighter, smaller chassis, but just a hot shoe behind the wheel. And Todd Cook, I know he's always up there in the mix too. And it's
there's a lot of diversity.
A lot of diversity, and everyone's just hammering on their shit and and going as fast as they can. And it's fun. It shows like what a great surface gravel is for racing on, because there's different ways to approach it.
It's an equalizer. You see, especially, on some of those corners where, he's got this crazy V8 with making all the power, but he just cannot get it down with those 2 wheels. And that's where the rally car really has a big advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting to see how close you were, but how different the driving lines were, how different the corners were taken. Spencer Steele is really taking much more of a grip line, it seemed like. He was trying not to get the rear end to come around. He was not wanting to kind of break traction. He was really trying to keep traction as much as he could. Which worked.
Especially leaving corners, he's like until it goes, right? So it's but I mean, you see the same thing in Jeff Swartz, Cup Porsche, right? That's I don't know my Porsche submodels. It's the nice one with like a sequential and all that kind of fun stuff and full aero. So I don't know if that's GT whatever Cup something. They're all 911s, right? So but he does the same thing, right? Because he's makes way more than enough horsepower to just. I mean, he was struggling all weekend because he can't find like a proper gravel tire for those. I think he made it down to a 17 by downsizing the brakes, but that's just like as small as he can go on this crazy Porsche thing, right? So he was on I forget what his tire sponsor is, Michelin. So he was on a Michelin rain like full wet rain tire on the weekend, and they're so soft, he was getting 1 or 2 runs out of a set of rear tires. But the same thing, just like blowing the tire, and so like you hear him all the time, like whoa, like just trying to get it to hook up, and I don't know, I love that shit.
It's wild. It's fun. It's cool to watch. It's cool to watch the video for sure. Got to ask how the car felt, and we put out that video beforehand about the Cusco suspension. So now this is your second race weekend with it. Where do you fall with it? How does it feel? Did you change some things?
Yeah, I'm smiling here because I'm going to frustrate you again.
Okay, you didn't change anything, did you?
I didn't change it.
Didn't change anything. How does it feel? Good.
Good. Yeah, fuck you.
Good.
Sorry.
Perfect. Excellent.
No.
Yes, very helpful.
It was because the course actually was pretty rough. Versus Rangeley, which was not only smooth but also super loose. This had a mixture. It had full blue groove. It had big embedded rocks. It had ruts. It had washboard. It had, I'd love to like find a picture of the ditches at Land's End, because these aren't just like your little side of the road ditch that we're like dropping a tire in. Like we're slamming the whole car into it, and it just like skateboards across the thing 50-50 style.
Wow.
And it's all about like trying to measure or trying to get a feel for like, all the way in the ditch, there's big rocks down the bottom of the ditch. 50-50 in the ditch, you're scraping the whole bottom of the car, which is essentially one big braking surface and slowing you down, but good cornering traction maybe. A couple tires in the ditch, you're not making good use of the road, and these ditches get so wide that you can actually put a whole car into the ditch too. It takes you way off your racing line to not hit them. So
you're definitely ditch hooking a couple of those corners. You could see like the side of the car just kind of thunk, drop into it, and pop out of it. Yeah.
So yeah, and so then also there's the pop out factor as well, right? Where like especially there's a corner called Bob's Knob, which is a big left-hand switchback with a bunch of people there. If you look at the video, it's one with a big crowd in it.
Yeah.
Has a huge ditch on the inside, which is great, but then it ends really abruptly. So like as you pop out of it, like commonly like the left side tires are bouncing way off the ground and then it comes back down and stuff. So trying to measure like what's fastest and the road surface this year, we're pulling gravel out of the ditches across the road. So like the straightaways with blue groove, normally we can blue groove up the corners and they become pretty grippy, but this weekend they stayed really loose gravelly because we were pulling just more and more road surface out of the shoulders across the road, which adds a whole another variable to not only trying to figure out what's fast for a race line, but also like trying to figure out the suspension to work and stuff like that. And so I didn't adjust anything and it was good.
It was good. Well, but you adjusted the driver.
What I did find though is that like, and I even mentioned this kind of in the cool down at the end of our like sole in-car video, not the combo, where I was like, man, because Abby notices I drove really aggressively and she was a little bit more scared, so it was probably a good run. And I say, but the car took it and the road took it, which I think is evidence of kind of like the suspension's ability to absorb those really aggressive inputs, because there were corners where I'm just like aiming at a ditch and just like slamming, kind of.
Yeah. You were not taking a smooth, easy line through there. I mean, you were going to the ditches. You were using.
Yeah. Well,
if there was a tree there that would help if you hit the tree, I think you would have been bouncing that car off the tree or something.
Yeah, exactly. If it would have helped the run, sure. Yeah. I mean, the whole body is a contact surface, so.
Right.
But right, yeah, we knew we were going to be tight on the run, right? And so I knew it was going to have to be aggressive to go for it, and it was hot in the car, so I wanted to get out of the car as soon as possible.
Good motivator. Good motivator.
Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, so it's I'll say we hit some good rocks in the ditches, bubbled some tires, flat spotted some wheels. The suspension, as far as I know, it didn't bend. So once again, durability check. So good there. But again, sorry, it just felt good.
That's awesome.
Well, it's going to be Tasso's school of race driver feedback. Like, good.
Thumbs up. Where's the thumb? Like, does the thumb rotate? Nope. It's thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah. That's it. That's all you get. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, job well done. Anybody that's watching, if you haven't watched the head-to-head, that's a really interesting video to watch, and it's, man, you're developing. Everything's right there. Something sooner or later is going to give, and you're going to get that first overall. It's right there. Yes, indeed.
Every Chihuahua has its day.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, Dussex, let's catch up with you because, man, you're just in New Jersey. Where were you at before that? I can't even remember.
I was in Washington at the Ridge Motorsports Park.
So Washington. I can't remember my geography too well, but it seems like that's like over here. New Jersey's over here. We're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So you've been doing a lot of driving, but a lot of it was just to get to point A to point B and then back again.
Yeah. We had Washington was a weekend, and then it took about a week to drive back, and then we had a big weekend or a whole week at PPIR, and then literally right after that, I'm gonna go shut the store real quick. We got all kinds of stuff happening.
Yeah.
Scare the semis out there.
You got a race all or semi? Is that what he said?
Race semi?
No, that's
that DSX. That DSX Motorsports is really taking off.
Somebody. That's right. No, it looks like they're dropping an engine off. But anyway, so we had a weekend at the Ridge, which was 1,600 miles away from the track, and then we drove back and had a super busy week at PPIR. And then on Monday, we loaded everything back up again, and then drove 1,800 miles to the Ridge on Tuesday. So it took 4 days to get there, and then raced at NJMP, and then we just got back yesterday, so about 4 days, 3.5 days driving back. So after the event was over. We had the car loaded up, strapped down, RV oiled up, everything ready to go. And then as soon as after the trophy ceremony, we, high-fived and shook hands and sticker bombed each other and left and drove back. So it was like Sunday was just incredibly long day, super long day.
Man.
So, yeah. So what is that? 3,200 miles and then 3,600 miles. So, about 7,000 miles in like 3 weeks.
and that's not counting. The irony is you're doing all that driving so you can get in the race car and drive. Like,
I know. We're joking.
Seems...
I was like, man, I've been sitting in this seat for hours just to get to a place to sit in a seat again. Yeah, at least Washington, the drive out there. I mean, it was hotter in the drive out to Washington. Plus, it's uphills and stuff. Like, you're going over the Continental Divide. We went kind of up through Montana, Idaho, and kind of that route instead of going like through Utah or going through Wyoming. We did go through Wyoming, but like as far as traversing, and I think you cross like the Continental Divide like 3 times. So it's like you're over it, and then you're back, and then you're over it again, and then you get through like the Cascades. You're driving through the Cascades and stuff. So it was definitely a couple times when we're doing like 20 miles an hour in the RV, just chugging along, hoping the thing doesn't overheat, and you're just going and going and going. And so, but it was like 105 degrees outside.
Oof.
What motor you got in that RV?
8.3 liter Cummins.
That's right.
So really the motor would be better if there was more cooling capacity. I don't think they anticipated I do with those RVs back in 1993. So like you really just ride in the oil temps, so like the oil temp is just got like a water to oil cooler. And so as the oil temps get high, then the water temps get high, and then it takes so long to get everything down. So you're just kind of constantly riding the oil temps. That thing's got enough power to pull up most of that stuff 45, 50 miles an hour, but you would just like spike the oil temps super fast.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, it does your work for sure.
Yeah. The old pusher is pushing along pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There you go.
So, yeah. So you got that, and it's 105 degrees out, and there's really not that much air movement in the RV, and you're like in a terrarium, like just like this 8-foot wide, 4-foot tall windshield, and so we're just like, I feel bad for Olivia. I mean, we were dying in the heat in the RV. It was just driving there was insane. Driving back wasn't as bad because we had some rain coming back and the sun's behind you most of the time. And but man, driving it was brutal driving out to Washington. But when we got to Washington, the weather was like in the 60s and 70s and no rain until like the very last session of Sunday. So it was like it was really like the perfect driving conditions.
Nice.
So.
Well, let's talk about the racing. How did you do at the Ridge? Let's start there.
So the Ridge was I picked up a set of used tires. They're Pirelli DHHBs. So they're rated for like 230 degrees, which is pretty hot. To get them up that hot is pretty tough. So we went out on a couple of first sessions, and I think in like my second or third session out of the first day, easily beat my first, like the time that I did last year. But I was really like, okay, like, there's low 27s in the car. I see it in the data, and I was just struggling to get it there. So by the end of the first day, just to try and get heat in the tires, I would basically go out, do 2 flyers, come back, because that's all we could do. Like on the third flyer, it would cut out with fuel starve. I would come back, fuel up, and then go out and blast 2 more flyers just to keep heat in the tires, and that seemed like it was going to work. So we did that all day Sunday. So on Sunday, we started off with that. I got into the 27s. I was like, sick. This is exactly what we need. I was like, but like my predicted time in the 27s was actually like, and this is a 227, or I think that's what, it wasn't 27s. I'm crazy. 47s. Yeah, because they're in a 146. So yeah, 147s. And so I was like, okay, but the times aren't lower. So I just got to keep pushing. And so eventually we go out. I'm going out on the, like after lunch, they do like the full course drift where they bring all the drift cars out there and they drift the whole course, and the track is usually just like destroyed. And so I was like, okay, we're running out of fuel because fuel's like $16 a gallon and we're using double fuel. I was like, and yesterday, on Saturday after the drift, it was just the track was a mess and you just couldn't put any traction down. And so a local came over to me and said, hey, I just went out on track. It's not too bad. I think it might rain if you wait. I think this is it. It's now or never. I'm like, okay,
Wow.
okay. So I go out there. I run like a 140, a 149. And the next lap's a 148. The tire's coming in. So I went ahead and pit, and we went out back there again and ran another 148. And on that fourth lap, I was coming around probably like turn 4, turn 5 is kind of like a big double apex long. It's like a big compression braking zone and stuff. And the predicted time was a 147 flat, and I could see it on my tablet. I'm like, oh, okay, just a little bit deeper. I'm telling myself, just a little bit deeper, like not trying to overdo it. Like if I could get into the 46, it's going to be a massive accomplishment. But you could just blow one corner and that's it.
Yeah.
And so we were in that 47s, and it was like trickling down to 46.9, 46.9, 47.0, 46.9. 46.8, and we come around and finish with a 46.7, a 146.7.
Wow.
And that put us in top 10 out of like 45 cars. The spread of the locals was really, really tight. I think like of all the cars that were there, I think there was maybe a 20-second spread on a 2.5-mile track. So the locals, I mean, it was really, really tight. And everyone was just like, oh my God, that's just an insane time. And I was crying. Like, I didn't think we were going to get to the 40s, like how deep in the 47s. I did not think we're going to get to the 46s. It's like, I'm crying. My girlfriend's crying. Like other people are like, oh my God, that was sick. Like high-fiving me. Like, I can't believe you just freaking did that. That was nuts. And like everything was crazy. They had a couple of the Surge Line guys. I don't know if John, you probably heard of Surge Line, right?
Yeah.
They had a couple of their 600 horsepower X-shift sequential hill climb cars out there. And I think we were 3 seconds faster than their fastest car.
Wow.
And so for those guys, everyone was like, I just can't believe that you were able to do this in this track. And that track is like, it's super wild. That track, if you feel like you're driving a nice geometric school line and the track feels good, you're way slow. There's like, it feels like the track is like, you have all this pavement around that you don't really use, and like curbing that you never get close to. And just like the whole track is like, it's just, if it feels forced and awkward, it's probably fast. And it's just like, it's an interesting track where you have to be really experimental to try and like really wring every bit out of it. And for like Jake at TGA, Jake went down there. Yeah. It was the first time he was at that track, and he was like trying to figure that out. So for like the locals, and even having some experience there last year, you realize like just because you're in the middle of the track doesn't mean you're in the wrong spot. And normally when you drive tracks, it feels weird to be like, why am I not turning from this curbing, or why am I not getting to this inside apex? Like that track was very, very weird in the sense that you would drive kind of like a what I would call like an awkward line. So it was. Is
it because it had like a bunch of like complex sequence corners, or was it a surface problem, or what?
No, so the surface has got a ton of grip. It's super, super high grip there. I think.
What about visibility?
Visibility, there's a lot of blind corners. A lot of blind corners, a lot of like the sequence you're talking about, the sequence of the corner and stuff like that. I mean, you're going through like double apex that have like a quick run downhill into like a big compression brake zone where like you get so much braking force that you're trying to drive as deep into it as possible. And just like goofy little things like holding your line over these blind hills, because if you go straight for a little bit, you end up scrubbing speed, and a lot of people will lift. I mean, just a lot of really kind of awkward spots where you like blow through like kind of like two curbs, and then you're driving straight into another brake zone and then hooking the left, and instead of like sweeping through there and stuff. And it's just really like really unique course. And Jake was saying that, and I don't know if I felt it like that, but he was saying like the course was like the road was kind of like a pair. You get on one side as you're crossing over the center of the track. You go. I don't know if I felt that, but I could definitely see it, because there's definitely parts of that course where you feel like, man, why is my back end spinning out, or why am I losing it now? And then you come up on tons of grip, like, oh my God, I can't believe I have that much grip. And super unique track.
So you're saying that like if you were looking at like a section of the flat road, it didn't feel flat. It felt like it was a pyramid, or maybe like a real aggressive crown or something.
Scrounded.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you could get on the inside of that stuff, it would be good. One of the things I started noticing at that track, though, too, was that my car was being extra rural drivey. and like my center dip is going out, and it was beneficial at that track because I would get sick overturn. You'd come like up turn one, it would be like a fast, like quick brake check, and then you go uphill into turn two. And it was a blind right-hander. And you'd come over it, and the car would get so loose, it would kind of be like a little drifty, then hook up, but then snap you in another drift off the other side. But you could hold that line through three and basically have like a slow, pretty gentle four-wheel drift through three, which was really unusual. You know, like it felt strange. And so I could feel something was up with the car, but I mean, it worked out for the car.
Right.
We came back to PPIR, and the car was doing really unusual shit, like drifting pretty much the entire course at PPIR. Still running fast, still running like 102s. But I mean, the car was doing donuts. It wanted to do reverse entries. Like it felt very much like a rear-wheel drive car last weekend, or not last weekend, the PPR weekend, and even at NJMP, the car was a little bit to handle rear-wheel drivey. So. Wow. Definitely working through, I think, a slowly failing center differential. But
okay, and this is in the yellow car.
Yeah, in the yellow car. Yep.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, the Ridge, wild track, super awesome people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big JDM, a pretty strong JDM community out there. So like a lot of guys like Stateside Garage and like Broham Racing and the Surgeline guys and a bunch of cool like. It was this a small but tight-knit Subaru community, so it was cool to see a lot of that out there, and the car got a lot of love. Nice. And we had a lot of fun with those dudes. So, I mean, and the weather was perfect. Everything was really, really awesome about that event. And those guys, just the Pacific Northwest, I want to go back because those guys are so cool, you know.
That's awesome.
Really, really like them.
Well, it sounds like it's a super challenging track, too. Like, that sounds like that is a track that, like just because it's so weird and the standard line and the normal way you would do things at other tracks just doesn't work. I mean, I'm guessing that is a big pull to go back to.
Mm-hmm. It's a really neat course. The pavement is like gorgeous. Like it's really nice road, like a really nice surface, which is probably the opposite of what Tasso's looking for. Tasso's looking for giant rocks and apparently ditches to rail slide through.
Right. That's right.
But yeah, the track is really gorgeous. They've been really putting a lot of effort into like like stepping up the track. So they've got like full suite of garages now. They're I mean, they have nice heated showers. Everything about it is super, super nice. And that track, I guess, like 10 years ago was mostly like it was really, really broken down. So whoever owns the track now has been spending a lot of effort in trying to get that track up to a really high standard. And it's really, really nice. Super, super awesome.
The Ridge now is what you're talking about?
Yep, the Ridge Motorsports Park, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know much about that track. Is it, I mean, similarly, it sounds like New Jersey's complex corners, elevation change, you know, road crown, stuff like that. How would characterize the Ridge, like by comparison or by itself?
Well, so I would say the Ridge is way better grip there. You get to NJMP. NJMP was that track surface is real slick. It gets greasy when it gets hot, and the average speed on that track for me was over 90 miles an hour. So my top speed was only 122, but you're going like flying through these corners, like just as fast as you can go. Pretty much. And you've got there's a couple turns where there's blind like over crests where it's like. You come up with a lot of grip, and then it's like over like off camber, and it dumps you. So you have to do like weird late apexes, and I mean it's just NJMP. I mean, and they even have like what they call a bulb. It looks like kind of like they call it the bulb, but it kind of looks like the tip of a penis. just the tip, and that thing has got a 7-degree bank all the way through it, and it is there's just most Subarus were going through that, and by the exit they were smoking because they were dumping oil into their catch cans and stuff. It was crazy. Like there was that much speed and that much grip there. We're going through it at least 100 miles an hour sustained.
Wait, now this is NJMP.
NJMP, yep.
Okay.
Not the Ridge, yep.
Okay.
So NJMP.
Well, hold on. I want to move just to New Jersey because I think that'll help clarify the conversation. But the interesting thing is, like, so we were talking about how close Tasso was, and he has this head-to-head video with like he's ended up second place. Here's the first place and how close it is. And Dussex, it sounds like you were kind of in that same thing. It's just you were able to kind of somehow get everything to line up, like we were talking about, like everything seemed to line up, and Tasso had one thing that just didn't quite line up, and that was the difference.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
The most criminal thing about the ridge that happened is that my camera died on the refuel on that last session.
So
I mean, not that. I mean, couple 147s, but I'm telling you, that was like, for me, it was so disappointing.
Now,
just because.
Yeah. You don't have that to go back and refer to. You can't go back and like say, I did this here.
Yeah.
That's what the difference was. But what's crazy is you said you had the data on your laptop in the car, so you knew that lap that you were on, you were close. Tasso, how much data do you have on a run, like as far as time or anything like that? Do you have anything?
No. All I really have is shift lights that I ignore, and then I don't know. Every once in a while, the dash tells me I over-revved it, but what's it? No.
And I would guess for a hill climb, it's a little bit trickier because you might not have as much comparative data because, I mean, the point A to point B is the same, but it's just one stretch versus like Dussex, you're doing laps, and so I think like track computers, it's easier for them to calculate deltas and stuff.
I do know some folks that have some of the hill climbs loaded up in Track Addict or something like that, and they'll do segments and stuff like that, so it can do predictive times and best segment and stuff like that. But I just don't have any of that. This is extra weight. I don't want to have that cell phone in the car.
Oh God!
Well,
especially up high. It's up high and forward to the center of gravity. You can't be having that.
That's right.
So.
It's just it's interesting how data was a tool for you, Dussex, it seems like.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's why I think it does a couple of things. One, I use it a lot at NJMP to decide. I use it a lot of other places, but in the idea that like this is not it, dial it back, reset, and go again. Or don't get upset that some dude is trying to get around you. Let that guy get around you. Or shit, we're right on the cusp. Like run it as close to that Mustang as you can. And it's like to me, the data isn't. Not only does it like I see like, oh my God, my predictor is where I need to go. Just like push it just a little bit harder. It also kind of keeps me in check. Where like, all right, like you really did overcook these last two turns. Quit beating on the car. And because you do take curves, you do jump over stuff, you do things that are rough on the car that if you're already a second or half a second off pace, there's just no sense in doing that.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
Have you ever has the data? I mean, in this case, the data told you this is could be the lap push. Have you ever gone like halfway into a lap and the data is just like your predictive is 5 seconds slower and just back out of it, save the car, save the fuel, and start over?
100%. Usually, if I'm like a second off, I will. Some tracks, if you can run external GPS, which I haven't been good about, it's really, really tidy. But when you have certain tracks where you don't have a good predictive GPS, you have to know that. And like, so for an example is at Pueblo, you can go through 1, 2, and you're like, man, and you're flying, and then 3 and 4, and then all of a sudden it just shows that you're hella slow because it thinks that you're somewhere else, like off the line. So if you like lift out of turn 5, think like, shit, I'm half a second or a second off, that'll screw you because you're not. It's just so that's something to keep in mind. But like I'm usually pretty familiar with that. PPIR has that, Pueblo has that, but like High Plains does it. High Plains is like really good. So you know that if you're on pace, you're good to go. And if you're not, you really know that you're not. So I even have moments where like you get those like, oh my God, did I just fuck that up? That just scared the shit out of me. And then you'll get like that half a second, that 0.3 of a second, like, oh my God, well, that was awesome. Let's just do that every time. So it's almost like immediate feedback that what you did right there was good. And that's what I like. And I guess for the hill climb scenario, it's probably really tough. But the more times you do it, like if you run it with all your practices and then year after year, the quality of your data gets better and better and better. And helps sets expectations a bit more realistic too.
It's tough. I mean, it does the same thing for your tracks too. Well, the track will come and go over a weekend stuff, but you know, our tracks similarly, like over the course of a weekend, everyone's times are dropping because not only are they getting back warmed up, getting the car figured out, getting the line figured out, but also the track is usually changing a bit, usually for the better over the course of a weekend. So we have that too. And also we just don't get as many laps or runs.
Right.
So over the, because the surface will change year to year. And then actually Land's End, there are a bunch of crashes and injuries and stuff on Saturday. So we only got 2 runs Saturday, 2 runs Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And, fortunately, we know the road pretty well from having raced there for the last 6 years or something like that.
Well, hey, Tasso, now, do you mean 2 time runs or like 2 runs, period?
So Saturday, all our runs are timed. And
Okay.
the Saturday runs are all practice/qualifying time. So whatever your fastest time is on Saturday is your qualifying time, which has little, you get points for it. So it is worth it to go fast. But, there's also like some start order stuff that'll change on Sunday. So we had a total of 4 runs up the hill over the weekend.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah.
That is not a lot.
No, it'd be hard to build a base of data for like a program to pull like fastest segments from, because not only are the segments all getting faster all weekend because the road hopefully is improving, but there's just not a whole lot for it to, pull from. And, it's, I don't know, it's not normal we only get that many, but we don't get, as much as we ever really get is kind of 6, like a 4 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I was going to say, almost your data was Abby, your co-driver, because not on the run,
scared.
but like towards the end, she's like, "Yeah, you're scared man. That one, that must have been fast." Like, so she felt a change in the car, change in the speed, change in something that like she's focused on her notes. She did an awesome job, but it's in the back of her mind, it's like,
well, and that's a lot of. She says this all the time, that I'm a really emotional driver.
Okay.
And so a lot of what she works on over the weekend is managing my mental state, kind of both in the car and then in between runs and stuff like that too. So, so she's very much, also being my wife and stuff, very much in tune with kind of like where my mood and attitude are at, and then what that influence that'll have on the car. And similarly to what you're talking about, Ryan, where, sometimes you'll feel like you're really on it and you're like, oh shit, we're off. Like, what the hell's going on? Or other times you'd be like, man, this run was just off. Like, oh, but it was fast, right? So it's kind of figuring out what those moods and stuff, like the influence they have on the actual elapsed time, is an interesting part of kind of both of our world. So, I'm sure that someone with, a big budget and big support could figure out a way to make lap
Pine cones.
Pine cones? Rub the pine cones together, Tasso. Send out a squirrel.
It wasn't me this time.
Timers work and like live timing, live feed. You back?
Oh, yeah, there you are.
It's not telling me that my connection is unstable. Yep. Anyways, what I was saying is I'm sure someone with big budget, big GPS, could figure out how to make lap timing and live feedback work well. And I'm 100% sure you could make it work, but I just don't have the patience or the technology to do it.
It's crazy that you basically got 4 runs, and that's that. Dussex, at the Ridge, roughly, how many laps do you think you turned? 20?
Maybe 20. I think we did, and this is flying laps. I think we did like 8 laps on Saturday, and we doubled up and did 4, another 8, so probably 12, so like 22 laps for the whole weekend.
Man, it's like, imagine if you had to put down your flying lap trying to do that 146, but you had 4 laps to do it.
It is like
1, 2, 3, 4. That's tough.
It's tough, yeah. I think too, if I was in a situation like what Tasso's in, where you only have 2 chances for a flyer, unless it was for preservation of the car in the first run, I think I probably wouldn't even look at the data in the sense of like, oh man, we're a half a second off. It would probably just make me push harder, because like for me, I can be like, I'm a half a second off, or 2 seconds off, let me back off here, reset, get a better spot, and then go again. Whereas like when you have only 2 shots at it, I'd probably just push as hard as I could every time.
And with the hill climbs, knowing that there could be accidents or delays or something like that, weather could set in. It's like you kind of, that first time out on Sunday, it's like you give it the beans, you go for it and try and get something in the books. And if you can go faster the second run, great, but you can't go conservative. You could probably never go conservative on Sunday.
Yeah, there are folks that kind of go slow and work up towards the speed, but I don't. I just kind of generally drive as fast as I can all the time.
Wow.
And you recognize, you're going to make some mistakes in a run, but you try not to, and then you just drive as hard as you can with the mistakes too. So
I wonder, like when you're going on a track and like Dussex, like let's just say 20, you're getting 20 laps by like 15 to 20. You kind of, I would guess that you probably get into a rhythm and you kind of know, you know the corners enough, like, here's the turning points, here's how I want to hit my marks. And then you can do a little bit of fine tuning once you have your line, once you have your approach to the track at that point, because you've got that bank of laps to kind of build up that experience, that line with. But like Tasso, do you find that you may be more focused on just being in tune with the car? Like you know what the notes are. You have the notes, so you know where the course is going. Do you focus more on just like being like really present, really in the moment, as much as like trying to really hit marks, or are you really trying to focus on hitting marks?
I think hitting marks actually.
Okay.
I can still think right now of corners that on my next run I would do better at because I didn't hit my mark, right? I just ran out of number of runs to improve them. But there's a couple corners like I totally don't have the right braking point, which is tough too because the surface changes. So you don't want to. It's better to be a little bit early than a little bit late on braking if you're not sure how gravelly a corner is going to be or something. But no, every time I was early on this one corner in my head right now that I'm kicking myself, which probably would have made the difference. But so yeah, I try and not think about driving the car or being in tune with it, which is like, we've been talking about like a good thing about like the suspension where it is right now and like the diff setup and stuff like that, being consistent, being trustworthy. Because if I have to think about what the car is doing, then I don't think about the marks or trying to read the surface ahead of me as I enter a corner, or how the car behaves when you first stab brakes. It gives you a big indication of what the next 3 to 5 seconds of your life are going to be like, based on that very first brake application. So
so like the consistency of the car. You're not having to drive around a problem, so you get a sense of what the car is going to behave like, and that's consistent, and so then you can actually just then focus on the road and the driving. You're not having to kind of constantly think about your inputs.
Or if I do have to drive around a problem, I internalize it quickly, so then it just becomes part of the application of tire to dirt kind of process. So it is something. Even I talked to, I forget who now. I know I was talking with Jeff Swart about it this last weekend, about just like driver comfort in the car being, and something, we even talked about on our last video. If you can drive 100% of a 90% car, that's better than driving 90% of a 99% car or something like that, whatever, right? I don't know if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. So like I've spent a lot of work on myself, like, or on the car, like making it feel, to use the cliche, like putting a glove on kind of thing, I sit in the car, the wheels where I like it, everything's like the driver ergonomics are really comfy, and then the behavior of the car is really kind of comfortable, so that I do think about braking points and apexes and letting the car track out some corners and trying to read where the blue groove is versus where the where the gravel is and stuff like that. So
Dussex, how about for you, knowing that, like you said, that the car felt like it was more rear-wheel drive? Like, how much did that factor into your driving? Like, is it something like once you knew what this different behavior was, you just kind of accounted for it, adapted to it, and then it was out of mind, or was it something that was always on your mind as you're turning the laps?
I think for me, I drove the car more in anger and frustration, because it was, all-wheel drive cars don't have turn-in that like rear-wheel drive cars have. So it was weird to have like the normal all-wheel drive, like heavy nose, heavy, turn-in, and then have a car that it was struggling to put power down. When it was happening at the Ridge, I was like, okay, I can work with this. It wasn't too bad. When it was happening at PPIR, I was like, all right, this is going to be just a smoke show then. And if anybody's watching this, they're getting a show.
Okay.
So like literally drifting the carousel, drifting onto the bank, drifting through the dip. Like it was the craziest shit
Wow.
I've ever, like I was like, and it was still, the car was turning like 102.4, and at Grid Life on brand new AO52s, it did a 102.2. So I was like really close to my Grid Life time at the Alpine Horizon Fest, but just drift. Yeah, the car was just so drifty. And but it was just enough. The car has just enough grip that you could lay into it. If you've seen there was a bunch of people posting videos of it from all these different angles. Of basically me coming, like the two cars coming through this hard braking zone and then leaving, and then me coming through this hard braking zone trying to close the gap, and then basically spinning out. And so you see the car like spin out, and then once it gets so far forward, I'm like, there's just you hold it, the car's just going to hook up and just drive into a wall. So I just kind of let it do its thing. But you could hold the car, and that car was like going through that corner. Most of the time it was sideways, and it was just kind of like a product of, I don't know, I don't know. That's just what it wanted to do. And you're just going through there with a bunch of speed. And so it was kind of frustrating. But you just kind of, you could, in some ways I could use it to be beneficial, but it was definitely not as fast as if I had like normal 4-wheel drive power. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because the car just didn't turn in like a rear-wheel drive car. So you had to you were kind of like getting the worst of both worlds. You're not getting the benefit. Exactly. So that is not, I mean, they have like, what do they call that, anti-vibration or whatever they do, the auto stabilization.
Yeah.
When you do in the GoPros, you can't even tell it's crazy. You can't even tell that I'm drifting, and like it's just insane to me. It was so, I was like, oh, that didn't even do this cool video. But when
GoPros are brutal.
I was like, it really normalizes a really pretty banana situation, but it was okay. I mean, so a couple guys did get like my donuts on like the bank, which I thought was kind of cool, because I was just frustrated with the car. And this is at PPIR, but yeah, I mean, driving, you're talking about cars wrecking and stuff on track. We had 0 incidences on track that stopped anything at the Ridge.
Wow.
Now at NJMP, there was one car in particular, and there's a bunch of cars that were having problems, but one car in particular was the cause of 3 lost sessions for me. So that was frustrating too. So I sat on, we had several like full course black flags where I sat on the pit lane for 10 minutes, hoping to just get one more shot at a flyer. And at one point I came in, and then it was I hot fueled myself, and then got back in the car and then waited on pit lane to get released, only for them to just bring us back into the paddock. Wow. So, I mean, talking about like what Tasso was saying, you just never know what you're going to get. You almost have to send it on every lap, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Right. I mean, it was kind of a shit show, or it wasn't a shit show. It was just kind of added craziness for that track too, but.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to do something different right now. We're going to talk about going to New Jersey. But for all you folks that are watching this on YouTube, this is going to be the wrap up, because the after conversation, we're going to send this over to Patreon. So our Patreon is up and live now, so you can head over there and join it. And what we're going to do with these podcasts is try and keep them kind of to an hour, and then the extended cut is going to be on the Patreon. So if you want to see the last bit of the conversation here, head over to Patreon. That's where it'll be. But for now, I want to say just thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your support as always, and stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at Flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.